So thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's very exciting. I can speak for both Hallie and I to say that we're really thrilled to be a part of this project and thrilled to be here this evening to be able to present it to you. As was already said, I'm a partner with OMA. Our office is based in Rotterdam, but we also have offices in Dubai, Hong Kong, and New York, where I'm based and where we did this project out of. Some of our projects that you may know are the Seattle Central Library in Seattle, Milstein Hall at Cornell University, the D. and Charles Wiley Theater in Dallas, and also currently under construction, the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Quebec. We don't really have a singular style, we like to say, of building, but try to build design each of our projects specifically for the context and the people that they're for. One thing that maybe is a trend, ironically for this project, is that a lot of them have a bit of bridging happening in them. OLIN is a world renowned for their parks, waterfronts, and cultural landscapes, including in DC, and we were excited to be able to team with them, both for this project and also another project we're working on with them in Santa Monica, a mixed-use project that, like the Bridge Park, actually tries to seamlessly weave together landscape and built structure. The Anacostia River is a great resource within DC, but one that still needs help to become a real resource for both sides of the river. Although the river is a connector, it also divides two very different parts of DC. L'Enfant's original plan for DC, which you see here overlaid with an aerial of the city, didn't actually include Ward 8 and Anacostia, which you see here. This pink strip is our site. The Navy Yard, which is on the west side of the Anacostia, became a unique place within DC, an area with many large industrial and office buildings. But Anacostia, left out of the plan, developed as a more pastoral collection of detached houses, including the famous home of Frederick Douglass, which you see here. The 11th Street Bridge, here in its original incarnation, connected both sides of the city. But as more and more infrastructure was introduced, Anacostia especially was severed from the riverfront by the Anacostia Freeway. More recently, both of those original bridges have been decommissioned and replaced with new bridges, and the existing piers are what provides the opportunity for the bridge park that we're building here. We think that the bridge park offers an incredible opportunity for both sides of the river. They're both changing, and we think that the new bridge park can bring together the emerging entertainment and retail area along Capitol Riverfront, and also the burgeoning arts district in Anacostia. We were inspired by the visions that we saw from local children. Scott and his team did an incredible amount of community outreach, including getting children to show what they thought this park bridge could become, something that really is a unique thing over the river. Their model showed spaces with programs that would be destinations, not just a way to cross the bridge and cross the river, but a new way to occupy the Anacostia. Here you see one model that imagined a series of platforms extending out over the river. We want this new bridge park to be active throughout the day and also throughout the year, linking up with different activities throughout DC. And as we looked at the design, we knew we wanted to provide space for different scales of activity. From the intimate to the more larger gathering spaces. We also wanted to engage the river at different levels and provide different layers of activity and engagement. We want to create the kind of programmatic density that you see on the Rialto Bridge in Venice, where the crossing over the Grand Canal also serves as an active public space. Currently, we're designing a bridge in Bordeaux, France, which you see here, that similarly provides a variety of potential uses. It's a bridge, a park, and a flexible plaza at the same time. Active programming is also essential to making a successful public space, we all know. Olin's revitalization of Bryant Park in New York showed that how important active uses are to making vital public spaces that people will use. And so each of these desires really framed how we started to form a very simple but clear design for the bridge. Here you see the current condition of the bridge piers. Our concept for the bridge park begins with two paths that launch from either side of the river. Rather than simply connecting, they extend to create a literal crossing or intersection in the middle of the river. One path extends from the Navy Yard side, and another from Anacostia. Their conjunction creates not just a river crossing, but an interlocking of the two sides, blending the two characters while maintaining each identity. The resulting simple form creates a gateway to Anacostia from the west side of the river, a simple yet iconic form over the river, and a canopy, a kind of civic roof on the Anacostia side that can shelter a number of programs. Where the two sides intersect, a flat, flexible public plaza hovers over the river, also creating an intersection, an interesting hybrid of the park and the bridge. Here you see that flexible plaza. Typically, a bridge is flat and low over the river. The layered effect that we get from the bridge form, the simple X shape, creates a number of intriguing possibilities. One is two vantage points at the end of either path that provide lookout points to either side of the river. Looking back over to the prominent landmarks within Washington, D.C., and also back to Anacostia and the Frederick Douglass House. That height also gives you a view back over the new bridges down to the terminus point of the crew regattas that are currently run along the river, linking the bridge to the life of a very important activity in the river and making that an integral part of the life of the bridge itself. Summer in D.C. Can be quite hot. We visited the site initially in July, which it's hard to remember now as you freeze walking around the city, but it's actually quite sweaty. So shade is really an important part of making this bridge park an attractive and usable space. The form of the bridge itself provides those shaded areas, and together with trees that will run along the bridge, provides a continuous shaded path from one side of the bridge to the other. We're working with Arup on the structure of the bridge, and they came up with an ingenious system that also makes use of this layering of the bridge, stitching together the different layers to form two trusses that meet in the middle of the bridge, forming a cantilevered bridge system. Here you see a test for that. We didn't do it. It's in Scotland for the fourth rail bridge that's here. That system allows us to not only have an efficient structural system, but also to build the bridge sequentially out over the river, avoiding any false work and just using a simple barge crane. So here you see that sequence. The form of the bridge will form a new icon within the city, marking a civic space that resonates with the important civic monuments that are located at the crossing of L'Enfant's plan, like the White House, and parks at L'Enfant's reservations like Stanton Park. The bridge park will be a new kind of public space, a new symbol in D.C., an icon that we hope will inspire and bring people from both sides of the river and from around the world. Typically, a bridge is a single arcing plane. The intersections of the two sides of this bridge create a series of layers where activities and programs can take place. So things don't just happen on the bridge, but they happen above it, under it, and within it. Like the layers of the Rialto Bridge, but transformed into a dynamic and flexible connector. A connector that can accommodate a diverse array of programs. Our scheme is more than a way to cross. It is a dynamic, multi-layered amenity for both sides of the river. It's a place that will sit amongst all the different other prominent civic spaces in D.C., but also be integrated and approachable for the people around it. So now I'd like to turn it over to Hallie to discuss more how the bridge works with the ecology of the river and landscape.
Thank you, Jason. As many in the audience may know, the City of Washington resides within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And in the diagram on the left, you can see that it's right at the juncture topographically between the Piedmont, the hilly topography of the Piedmont, and the smoother topography of the coastal plain. What the team was really intrigued to discover, however, is that the Anacostia watershed largely resides in the state of Maryland, outside the district, and this becomes a factor in its pollution levels. I'm originally from Baltimore, so I'm a little embarrassed to say that Maryland is contributing to tremendous stormwater runoff, non-point source pollution that you see in the upper right, these yellow arrows coming down. The creeks and streams are feeding poor runoff, oils and grease and things of that sort, as well as trash and debris. The district has actually installed a tax on plastic bags, which has done a tremendous amount to stop the flow in the more immediate area. But I know that there are many people who would like to see the same happen on the Maryland side. A second source of pollution is the Kenilworth landfill and the Navy Yard. In both sites, there's very contaminated soils. And then the little yellow dots that you see everywhere are the combined sewer overflows. The district is currently addressing this issue, but it can't happen soon enough. And in fact, our site involves accommodating one of the new tunnels and storage devices. Because in the heavy rainfalls, as many may know also, and the image that Jason showed earlier causes the sewers to overflow and directly flow raw sewage into the river on a daily basis, virtually. The good news is there's a lot of wonderful organizations here in the district, like the Anacostia Watershed Society, who were part of the oversight committee on the competition. We learned a great deal from them. Also groups such as Anacostia River Keeper, you can see here on this image, who have assessed the threats, the problems, but also the solutions. And so we think this project is a wonderful opportunity to highlight all the issues, but also to highlight all the wonderful work that's being done and still needs to be done. I know that the Watershed Society in particularly would like to see a river everyone can enjoy and swim in and fish with in 2025. So that might be a bit early, but they're very passionate and it is achievable. The upper reaches of the Anacostia River have a wonderful sort of romantic quality. A lot of the boaters call this area Narnia, and it's this green edge that we want to work to extend down to our site as well, this multi-layered landscape, if you will. So we studied the larger watershed to understand how the various plant communities provide habitat for various birds and other wildlife, and looked to layering these plantings, particularly on the Anacostia Park side, which, as you may know, is predominantly lawn and just a few trees. It's a very denuded landscape at this moment in time. We took that idea and deployed it on the site, locating plant species that are evocative of the upland in the middle of the bridge at the plaza, and then lowland on the edges, and then likewise on terra firma on the Anacostia side from the upland to lowland towards the river's edge. We also had an array of typologies such as the tidal marsh, emergent wetlands, meadow grasses, and woodland that you see on the bottom, and located these communities based upon elevation and access to water. We had a three-pronged water strategy, starting with the bridge park or the deck itself, creating plantings and water-receiving landscapes that will allow us to capture, cleanse, and reuse stormwater. On the shores, we took a similar approach. The plantings will work to cleanse the water before it reaches the river. And then within the river itself, as part of the Environmental Education Center, which is located right here on the shore, but connects up to the bridge itself, floating wetlands around the various piers to demonstrate to the public the power of plantings to cleanse the water. This wonderful form also gives us the opportunity to celebrate water in all its forms. And on the Navy Yard side, we've located this waterfall, which will again demonstrate that cleansing and filtration but it will also provide a lovely entrance and threshold to the bridge park on this side. Cooling breeze or Venturi effect coming off of the waterfall, particularly in July and August here in DC. And just a calming sound letting you understand that you're in a new place, in a new realm. On the Anacostia side, we also have really 3 waterfalls, 2 above and 1 below deck. The one below deck is picking up surface river water and dropping it back down, again as part of the environmental education program to demonstrate that the oxygen levels in the river need to be raised. And that's one way of doing that. In addition, the waterfalls above would allow people, children in particular, to reach out and touch the water, and they really symbolize the aspiration of a future healthy and clean river. You can see these 2 waterfalls. They make a nice garden path to the cafe beyond. So it's an array of ecological strategies, one that we think really should reside in the Environmental Education Center, possibly a digital model that tracks in real time the health and success of the cleansing strategies as they continue. But ultimately, we're trying to create more accessible edges to the river. Right now, there's the water trail, but not any boardwalks where you can actually get down to the water's edge, kayak, canoe, enjoy the plantings, and explore the flora and fauna. It's a place that really needs to work throughout the seasons. We have ideas of focusing on fall plantings in particular for beautiful fall color. And like the Cherry Tree Festival, perhaps having a fall festival here as well. Has to work in spring and summer, and even in the winter months. I think the cafe and the Environmental Education Center ensure that it will be a vibrant place even then. When Jason, myself, and our collaborators first came on the site, we were really struck by the different character of both shores. The fact that the Navy Yard is quite built and urban. It has a wall surrounding it, historic wall that's a good 10 feet tall. And on the Anacostia side, again, this very open landscape, which used to be very pastoral and agricultural, but which has become a bit oversimplified. So the original concept from a landscape perspective was to give each side of the river a little bit of the other. Really to promote a more green edge on the Navy Yard side, and then a more built and active edge on the Anacostia side. This idea of relaxation from the Navy Yard and more athletic and play areas and things of that sort on the Anacostia side. There's really an array of program that steps one across. Anaquash Plaza. Anaquash is an Indian word that stands for trading place, which we thought was quite interesting. So this idea of the exchange, a place of exchange, culminating in that central plaza. On the Anacostia side, we also felt it important for the project to extend in the future, possibly in future phases, to create a neighborhood park on the terra firma areas with many paths up to this play area that's sort of the entranceway from the Anacostia side. An array of programs such as barbecues and picnic areas, a fountain that might be inspired by vernal pools to teach children about that rich ecology, urban beaches towards the edge of the river, and a water taxi launch and stop right here at the end of Good Hope Road that connects up to historic Anacostia. We certainly wanted to make this a very connected place, and using the existing vehicular bridge, make sure there was a multiple access as shown, and to also extend the wonderful DC bike share system that's so popular and so successful here now as well. To understand that There might be bus stops that are calibrated according to the New Bridge Parks program, but also this could accommodate the streetcar in the future. And then the circulation from the water that we mentioned, the water taxi, as well as the multiple paths for pedestrian connectivity, both on the Navy Yard side and the Anacostia side. So now I'm just going to walk you across from, this is from the Good Hope Road entrance, past the picnic area and fountain on the left. You see a performance area, an amphitheater on your right, green amphitheater. This is a view of the children's play area with views back to the river's edge. The sort of bubble topography that would be very active and engaging physically to children in particular. This is a view from the upper reaches of the X, looking back towards the mouth of the river. I think the sunsets here would be just magical. And then more intimate spaces such as the Hammock Grove, closer to the relaxation side or the Navy Yard side, and back down. And you can see on the right this idea of trying to use art to enliven that massive wall along the Navy property. Turn it back to Jason.
Hi, I'm back. So I just want to describe briefly the programs that line the bridge. There's a series of programs that were requested in the brief, but that we try to deploy in a way that would really activate the Anacostia side of the river and the Navy Yard side as well in a very specific way. So starting with the Environmental Education Center. So this is a space that is really meant as a place for children and adults to be able to come and learn more about the river itself. It's located on the east side of the river, right at the water's edge, where it can be accessible by both cars and buses, but also directly by boats, we hope. This shows a plan of that. It's really a kind of classroom space that children can be brought into and then guided up onto the bridge for more in-depth learning. It sits looking at the aerating waterfall that Hallie mentioned just a minute ago, looking back west across the river. And then above, you see the waterfalls that extend above it, and also a series of educational gardens where there's local flora and fauna that children can engage with and learn from. We're also hoping to incorporate a series of measures to bring local history and the stories of local residents into the life of the bridge itself, using maybe an instrument like StoryCorps. This is a kind of roving collection device, partly run by NPR, where local residents can actually go and tell their stories and maybe get their stories filmed. And those could actually even be then deployed on the bridge either as audio or even as videos projected onto the waterfalls themselves. That's one part of a kind of series of dynamic public artworks that we hope to also incorporate into the bridge itself. Some of which we want, like the work of Thomas Saraceno, to really engage visitors and almost be devices that help you actually engage with the river in unexpected ways. So for example, in a void space that we might have on the east side of the river, a series of nets would allow people to kind of step down and hang out over the river in a kind of giant public hammock, looking down to people in kayaks below. Here, under what I referred to as the civic roof earlier, is the cafe space. It's a space that is sheltered, again, from the sweltering sun of the summer, and also provides interior space so that even in the winter, on a day like today, maybe today would be a stretch, but still, you would be able to really use the cafe space because there's part that's indoors, part that's sheltered from the sun, and part that's directly adjacent to the river with a view of the river itself. That space is also visible from above on the upper layer, providing light down into the internal cafe space and also letting you know it's there. I won't go into every aspect of it, but health is an important part of the design of the bridge. Obviously, it's a public outdoor amenity that's meant to activate the river itself, which is the starting point. That riverfront and the way that it's developing is already becoming more and more, I think, a part of the lives of people and recreation on both sides of the river. We started by trying to really utilize that, utilize what was already there, the bike trails that are on both sides, by providing easy access up on both sides of the bridge, up onto it from the riverfront itself. There's also a running track you saw here, a continuous path or loop from the Anacostia side up around and then back down. It's a half a mile, so if you run around it 52 times, you can do a marathon. Very, very hilly marathon, but if you're up for it. Here. In the middle of the bridge, where the two paths intersect, there's a large public plaza, a flat, multifunctional space. We really wanted the heart of the bridge to not be necessarily a specific program space that would have a defined use, but more, as I just said, a multifunctional space that can be used by people in different ways all throughout the year. So as a space for casual viewing and sitting, or as a banquet space, or even a space for weddings. It'll be a unique place within the city and really further afield, a public place that sits over a river. It'll be activated by the programs on all sides of it. So for a wedding, you can utilize the cafe. There's an urban agriculture area behind the cafe with a series of gardens. They could be used and produce sold in a market on the main plaza. The beer garden or picnic garden on the west side of the plaza can be used as a concession place for concerts. There could be a somewhat small basketball event, or even, again, on a day like today, an ice rink or ice hockey even. One great thing about this design is that if you have any stick-based sport, you can make a really good logo. It can also be used for film screenings, really engaging with the projection, maybe even directly on the river. So here you see that plaza here. To the west, there's a more traditional performance space with the stepped seating. You see that here. That actually leads directly down to the west side of the riverfront itself. And then above it is the running track / viewpoint, and also the waterfall that extends on the west side. We tucked that down into the structure of the bridge itself, partly to provide back-of-house space, but also to shelter it from the acoustic conditions that exist from the vehicular bridge that's to the north of this pedestrian bridge. We think this space, it's a space for about 280 people, will be also an important and active use throughout the year. Again, the layering of the different levels of the bridge facilitate that use because speakers and lighting can be hung from the upper level, and the upper level also, of course, provides a unique vantage point to see the performances. So together, all of these programs and also the bridge's engagement with the river, we think create a unique new space within DC that's simultaneously iconic yet also flexible and approachable. We think it'll be appreciated by people at every level in DC, even from Marine One. And hopefully will take its place within the icons of DC and really change the way that people think about a lot of things around it. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. So my name is Scott Kratz. I am the director of the 11th Street Bridge Park, and what I'm going to do is talk for just about 5 minutes on focusing specifically on how we sort of describe this project as a community-led urban design intervention. And then I'll turn it over to David, who is a member of our Design Oversight Committee, talk a little bit about his experience, and is a longtime resident in east of the river. And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation, and then hopefully turn it over to you to hear your thoughts in discussions. But first and foremost, I should say that this is a project working collaboratively with the district government, most specifically working with the District Office of Planning and the District Department of Transportation, and the Ward 8-based nonprofit appropriately named for this project, Building Bridges Across the River at the Arc. Who's been to the Arc? Can I see your hands? Oh, that makes me feel so good. For those of you who didn't just raise your hand, the Arc is a 110,000 square foot facility located in Congress Heights that has 11 different nonprofits that are under one roof: the Washington Ballet, Levine School of Music, National Children's Medical Center, Boys and Girls Club. It's a really magical place. I'm a full-time employee of the Arc, and they're helping lead this effort, which makes sense for lots of different reasons. And this project first started about 4 years ago as an idea from the then Director of Planning, Harriet Tregoning, who I'm sure many of you know now at HUD. And Harriet saw this unique opportunity, this really once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, when the old bridges were coming down, to use this as a way to think about, hey, instead of just getting rid of everything, is this an opportunity for us to transform part of this old infrastructure into a new civic space? I was having a breakfast with Harriet about 3 years ago and asked what I thought was an innocent question at the time. Beware of innocent questions. What's happening with all that construction on the 11th Street bridges? Because I live near there. I live on the corner of 9th and I Southeast. And Harriet immediately sort of zeroed in on me and said, have I got a project for you? I have this idea to transform the project and transform the bridge into a new civic space, but I need some help. What do you think? You want to help? And it was 7 o'clock in the morning. And I probably should have had more coffee, but immediately saw that I can't think of another intervention here in the nation's capital that in a single space can accomplish each of our 4 key goals. And those are all of which you just heard about in the design. The public health. So the communities along the Anacostia River have some of the most challenging health statistics in the city, actually in the nation. 41.9% adult obesity rate, highest rates of hypertension, type 2 diabetes, et cetera. And having a safe place to play can be a significant intervention to that. 2, and you heard a lot about this, about the design, is re-engaging with this amazing natural resource that's hiding in plain sight of the Anacostia River. And to get people to care about the river, you need to get them down to it. The 3, and I think this is the goal that most viscerally connects with most people, it's the river's also been a dividing line for generations. So how do we have a place that connects east and west and really has that, creates that one city concept? And finally, if we're really successful, this can be an anchor for economic development. If the Bridge Park is able to be a significant destination, which we're confident it will be, that's a lot of people walking and biking past storefronts on both sides of the river, but particularly historic Anacostia, and can provide business opportunities and jobs and economic opportunity. So Harriet spent the first about 6 months or so getting the green light from everybody that we knew we have to get the green light from, all the federal and local stakeholders, the mayor, city administrator, National Park Service, National Capital Planning Commission, the Navy Yard, and everyone immediately recognized what a phenomenal opportunity this was and said, yeah, we're in, this needs to be explored. And then most importantly, we then went to the community and asked a series of 2 questions. One, should we do this project in the first place? And I don't think I realized, David and I were talking about this earlier, I don't think I realized how profound that was, that in essence what we were doing was asking for permission and an assessment of need. And to date, we've had a little more than 450 community meetings, and that includes everything from coffees with church leaders to formal presentations to on both sides of the river and increasingly around the city. And we've heard a almost uniform yes to that first question, which then leads us to the second question, which is, well then, okay, help us determine, help us shape what this space can be. What are the needs that this bridge park can service for the community on both sides of the river and across the city? And interestingly, at least I find it interesting, we heard the same programming ideas from residents on both sides of the river. And those are the concepts that you heard Jason and Hallie talk about, the concepts for a performance space, an environmental education center, intergenerational play space, the urban agriculture, the kayak and canoe launch, public art that tells the rich history of the region. And so we kicked off a $1 million pre-capital campaign about 16, 17 months ago, which we've actually exceeded, that enabled us to launch a larger nationwide design competition, taking these community-inspired programming ideas and asking some of the most talented designers in the United States and the world to manifest those into these amazing renderings that you saw tonight. And when you throw a party, you have no idea who's going to show up. But we had 254 firms register, 81 firms formally apply and submit in phase 1. We windowed it down to the top, the 4 teams. And what was really critical was, how do we make sure that as this project has been driven by the community from the beginning, how does the community play a significant role? How do we not just sort of go away for 7 months and then come back and say, look what we came up with by ourselves, but how do we let the community make sure that they're helping to shape this project at every step of the way? And to that end, we created what we called a Design Oversight Committee. These are representatives of stakeholders from the National Park Service and the Navy Yard and National Capital Planning Commission and all of our important partners, but also residents on both sides of the river and around the city. And I'd like to ask really quick, I know we've got a lot of members of the Design Oversight Committee with us tonight. Can I ask you just to stand up really quick? Please? Thank you. These people have been amazing. Their role was to shape this project, and their fingerprints are all over this design. They helped create the design brief before it even went public and changed it in significant ways. They met with the finalists for our stage 3 and helped with a day-long the briefing. And most importantly, then they met multiple times with each of the 4 final design teams for a half day for each of the team twice over the course of the summer to respond and react to some of these ideas. And the project, certainly I'm confident to say the project that was ultimately selected was so much better for that. And finally, at the end of when we got the 4 renderings in, the 4 final designs, their role was to meet together for an entire day, discuss, and evaluate, and using the same tools as our design jury. And at the end in September of last year, the most magical thing happened, and I'm told it's very rare for these sort of design competitions, is that the design jury, made up of experts from the design field and public health and so forth, was completely unanimous on the design that you've seen tonight. The Design Oversight Committee gave the highest markings and highest ratings to the OMA and OLIN design, and even 1,100 people who took an online survey gave this design the highest marking. So we knew we were confident in the decision that was made. At this point, now that we have a final design that people can look and taste and touch, we're launching a larger capital campaign to help fund this. The city has committed $14.5 million, which is estimated at half of the overall city support, because that's really one of the first questions that the city asks, or the funders ask, is where is the city on this? We are continuing to reach out to the community. So we're events like tonight. The next week we're speaking to the historic Anacostia Boat Association and ULI fellows, and we're out speaking to folks several times a week. If you're interested in finding out more about what we're trying to do, there is an email list that we'd encourage you to sign up for and keep up to date on what we're trying to do. Finally, we are looking to activate the space before we open up. And we anticipate 2 years of pre-construction, about a year and a half of construction, and earliest we could open up would be the summer or fall of 2018. But until we get to that point, we need to activate the space, and so mark your calendars now. On April 12th, 2015, this year, we are hosting the first annual what will be an annual Anacostia River Festival, celebrating the river, its culture, its history, and the communities that live and work alongside it, in partnership with the National Cherry Blossom Festival and the National Park Service. It's going to be amazing, and it's going to be a lot of fun, big free festival. And I'll wrap up by saying we had a cultivation dinner last night in partnership with the Dutch Embassy. It was very kind. And someone asked me, Scott, how do you know that this is going to be a success? I mean, you're measuring it in lots of ways, but how do you really know this is going to, that this will really sing, that this will really work? And I sort of thought about it for a minute, and I said, when this opens in 2018, and we have third grader from Anacostia come down and experience the river and this amazing natural resource for the first time, we know this works. When we have a resident from Capitol Hill who also has never been down to the river come down and take in that amazing view of the Cedar Hill where Frederick Douglass lived for decades and walked across the 11th Street Bridge every day on his way to work, we know we've succeeded. And ultimately, when we really know we've succeeded, it's when that fourth grader and that from Anacostia and that resident in Capitol Hill are taking in that view together, sharing that view, and maybe even sharing a conversation and sharing a moment together. That's when we know we've really succeeded. With that, I'd like to turn it over to David and talk a little bit about the experience as part of the Design Oversight Committee and thoughts about the project.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everybody. I'm not sure if my mic is on. Is my mic? It is? I love a microphone. It's addictive. Good evening, everybody. My name is David Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Pearl Coalition. I also serve as the Dean with Citizens Association President, which is a neighborhood northern Anacostia. That Narnia picture that was shown earlier is kind of my youthful domain where I had the pleasure of growing up kind of playing in that Narnia area. So that is actually how I see the river, which is much different than most people see the river. So this project has always been kind of a personal affinity for me. I actually was asked to join this committee by Councilmember Grosso, who said, hey, Dave, I was a former Anacostia River keeper. I worked for 10 years basically with young people around environmental restoration work and civic engagement, creative economy, creating opportunities for young people within our communities. So when I was asked to join the committee, I said, sure, I'll talk to Scott. I've heard great things about Scott from actually community members. Scott and I talked for probably about an hour and a half the first time we talked. I mean, it was exciting. It was synergy around our projects. We talked about Frederick Douglass intimately. Frederick Douglass was one of the key organizers for the Pearl Escape. Actually, Good Hope Road at the foot of the bridge is named Good Hope Road because not just African Americans who were indentured and enslaved in D.C. used Good Hope Road as an escape route in the Underground Railroad. But also, there were other indentured populations of European descent that often used Good Hope Road as a way to seek freedom. So the synergy around this project was just amazing from a cultural perspective related to my day-to-day work. I willingly joined the committee. I discussed it with various members of my community, and they all gave me marching orders as I walked in the door, what my role would be. I unfortunately didn't get to really be the executive director of the Pearl as much as I would have liked during the committee because the emphasis for me is how do we use the park as a way to connect not necessarily east of the river, but all of our communities in a way that is what brings us together as opposed to pulling us apart. And that's something I think Scott demonstrated throughout the process. I will say that before I even attended our first committee meeting, Scott had already met with hundreds of meetings where people had expressed various concepts of what they would like to see at the bridge. So when we actually became to the table and started having these discussions before we met with the design teams, it was an amazing group. I think the most exciting part for me was to actually sit at a table with someone from National Park Services who was about protecting the park. If you've ever worked with National Park Services, you understand the smile. And then right across the table from them was the Navy, who was concerned about security. But my favorite cheerleader was the rowing club. Everything was about rowing space. So every time they made a comment, it was like, well, you got to keep that bridge away from the water, basically, so we can row. I love these teams. And you had the Anacostia Watershed Society. How do we incorporate environmental education into the bridge? So you had a very diverse group. And of course, my point was, how do we preserve community culture and heritage in a way that does not forget the community 20 years from now? If, once this bridge is built, how do we preserve that rich history around what the word Anacostia means, which is a trading place? The Nacostank Indians used to actually inhabit that area and would trade with the Potomac Indians and various Indians, Native Americans from around the region. So how do we tell those stories with the bridge? And that was my position. And my purpose at that table was to make sure that those views were expressed in the design itself. One of the most impressive parts about the Design Oversight Committee, as a community member, and I've been in Washington, D.C., I'm a fourth generation, my children make fifth generation Washingtonians. Often when opportunity for development happens on a community level, people come and tell us, hey, this is our plan for you. But this process was very, very different. Scott came and said, hey, what do you think this is a good idea? And what would you like to see? So it was the opposite. And then when we finally got to the design phase, we actually saw renderings of design that was, propagated and discussed from young children to people in the design committee. And we actually saw designs developed specifically based on community input, which was not necessarily it was kind of, for me, it was a rare experience to actually see vision articulated in a way that was truly community-driven and community inclusion. So I'm very proud of Scott for his work to make that happen. That's rare, and I'd like to clap for you just for accomplishing that one piece. One of the other most impressive things, the diversity of the folk in the design committee. So we had experts in architecture, structural design, and if you could have been a fly on the wall and hear these debates about how to balance that, you would have been highly entertained. Let me just put it that way. And they were nonprofit leaders and community activists in the room. Some of those design committee members are here who are very passionate about things. Well, how do we make sure people in the community have the creative economy opportunities? To how do we make sure people in the Navy Yard community have this particular type of amenity as opposed to, we want more activity in Anacostia, we need activity on this. I mean, these debates and discussions based on that diversity of the committee, we really drilled down to a point where we had consensus, which is rare. But we were coming to consensus points very quickly, and I've never been a part of a committee of this nature, and I cannot speak more to that. I will say that our emphasis, of course, was, and it was mentioned in the design, health, recreation, business, arts, environmental education opportunities, cultural heritage diversity opportunities, and connection opportunities. And to infuse that all into a design and a discussion was a monster task. And to see it actually happen as a committee member is something that I'll be proud of. I actually insisted that my children come to participate in this process so 20 years from now, 30 years from now, they could tell the story, hey, this happened before successfully, and this is how they did it. And including our youth is critical in everything that we do. And I'll end by saying that one of the key pieces to this bridge, the opportunity that it creates for the community, is several. It's a fold. For one, the Anacostia River needs our attention. We're in the nation's capital, and yet we have probably, if not the most contaminated river in the nation, if not, I think number 2 behind like Cancer Alley in Louisiana. So the river itself really needs your attention, our attention, as a city, as a region. And this bridge will bring attention to that. And the bridge also serves as an opportunity for us to engage with the river in a way that hasn't been possible before. Also, the parks themselves that have divided, not just people of color, but the socioeconomic divide, but just the isolation from people to the environment has been and can be corrected through this bridge process. And that's an exciting opportunity that's rare. And connecting Narnia, I love that term, and I'm going to use that from now on. Connecting Narnia with the Navy Yard area to the Potomac River is going to be critical as our future generations start thinking through how we develop in a green way that doesn't divide us and connects us. And the other aspects of the project that I think are even more probably important is it's not the bricks and the mortar, and the design is beautiful, but it's about the people who live in the community now and the intentional way we go about development, to think and to use forethought that what will these impacts be for the people who live there now? Will they still be there after the bridge is complete? And I'm happy to say that we're having those discussions. Often, those are very difficult discussions to have, and Scott and I talk about this every time we talk. These words, and I'm not even going to use some of them today, unless you bring them up, but they're special words that we all have different definitions, but in our heart, we know that at the end of the day, development can do harm. And we have to do things in an intentional manner that empower the people we pretend or claim we want to help. And this project has been an example of how you do that. You actually engage the people that are in the communities at every level, from high governmental officials to corporations to nonprofits to faith leaders to young people. And that has been a part of this project. And I probably learned more in a year a part of this project than I have related to planning participation as a community member in any other process that I've been a part of. So I'm really proud of the opportunity, and it's still going to be a challenge for us to make sure that after the bridge is, and as the bridge is being developed, that we move in a parallel track, and that's not just as a committee, but as a community, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, to make sure we regionally focus on the things that are most important, which are the people who live around these locations and the people who interact with our environment every day.
Thank you, David. But what were some of the early driving discussions that you had with landscape architecture, those driving forces? What drove the design?
Well, I think first and foremost, we had to design the team that we brought to the table to really tackle this design brief. And I think Jason would agree that ultimately this project is the fusion of architecture, landscape, and infrastructure. And OLIN and OMA had already collaborated on the competition that Jason showed earlier, the 4th Street in Arizona competition, which was about that fusion as well, or full integration. So I think we knew we wanted to pursue this together. And likewise, it was key to have collaborators people we had collaborated with previously really could hit the ground running. And if you want to add to that, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say about when it came to looking at the actual project, I think that the key things for both of us were how to find a space that we thought would be big enough to really support a place, not just a passage. And how do we then at the same time create a really robust connection at either end and really both engage with and help revitalize the river on both sides. I think that those are the key things, and maybe some of the tricky, I mean, you see it in all the competition entries, but where you try to find a place that you can really broaden the bridge out to become more than just a bridge was one of the key driving decisions that I think was in a lot of those initial schemes that we showed.
Right. I think that overlap and exchange was key, but also on the Anacostia side, to be sure that we had a vibrant connection all the way from the underpass at 295 up to the bridge, this sort of proposal of a neighborhood park type place, and then also which programmatic elements we would locate on that side as a sort of anchor and threshold. I don't know if you can still hear me. Okay, there you go. That being the play area, which is often a good sieve, if you will, to ensure a proper sort of eyes on the park at the entranceway. Oh, okay. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, thanks.
Well, and one of the most, to go on that point, I think one of the many brilliant things about the design is that intentionality of programming, that you placed the urban agriculture area right outside the cafe that's right next to the central gathering place, where each of those spaces can then have a symbiotic relationship to each other, or that you've had an intentionality of inserting that sort of activity into the Anacostia side versus more of that pastoral the area into that more urban hardscape of the Navy Yard that you've accomplished so well. One more question for you, and the next question for David. As we went through the design competition, twice you all spent a good 4 hours with the Design Oversight Committee, as all the teams did. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was, sort of how you approached that? Because one of what we did to explain to the audience, we assembled this wonderful group of folks, of community stakeholders from a variety of different areas and expertise. But we really let each of the design teams determine how they would best use those 4 hours. So it was completely up to you to say, did you want to show different schemes? Did you want to have people vote? All of the teams used it different ways. But can you talk a little bit about that experience, what that experience was like for the two of you and for the team?
Well, for me, it was wonderful to have these very thoughtful and inspiring comments come back early on in the process. We weren't working in a vacuum, as is often the case, in sort of an ideas competition, and I think that's what's made it easier for this to transition into a real project, having that input early on. Like any good client, this group was one that kept your feet to the fire and made sure that you covered all the bases, and that was extremely helpful, I know, from the landscape perspective, and we learned a great deal from all of their input, particularly in our case from the Anacostia Watershed Society.
Yeah. I think it was really crucial, I mean, not to work in a vacuum, and also at the same time not to just work with the jury. It's not, it was interesting that the Design Oversight Committee, while they had a kind of say, they weren't the final decision maker, which I think gave a lot of freedom to what was discussed and how we took it, meaning that we didn't have to listen necessarily to every single input that we got from all an incredible array of different stakeholders, but at the same time we had the freedom to respond in different ways and then come back a second time and see what the response would be. So I think it was really effective in steering us away from certain moves that would have been maybe disastrous, and towards others that really enhanced the project. We presented 4 schemes at first. That's the kind of route we took, which is kind of actually a little crazy if I think back on it, but and then winnowed it down to 2, and I think that it was really up to us in the end, but certainly the way that we both told the story of the final scheme and the way we developed it was really bound up in those 4 hours. So.
I think it was, just to add, I think it was really interesting all of the different competitors and how different each scheme was. I thought that was really wonderful to see, and I think that was how the committee helped inform and shape some of the responses. Was quite interesting.
Well, and it was phenomenal to see that they brought in the most exquisite models. It was really striking, and sort of walked the Design Oversight Committee through those. That was really striking. And separately, we're talking to one of their colleagues, and earlier today, and I'd love to see someday sort of what ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak, and what didn't make it into the final one. But that's for another conversation.
Can I add one thing? Just one dynamic that was, of course, super interesting in those sessions was that people weren't really supposed to give their aesthetic opinion exactly. It was more, people were there more as sounding boards for their particular area. So if you were from the Navy Yard and we were trying to use the Navy Yard parking lot as a new lawn space, you could say that's really high risk. And if you were from the people in charge of the regatta and we wanted to create a viewing platform for the regatta, you could say, well, that's very low risk. But that high and low risk became kind of code words for whether you liked it or not at the end of the day. And of course, we're also desperate for any input. You're doing the competition, you're in a way in your own vacuum, even within your team. So when you have multiple options, maybe we even have disagreements. Anyway, you're just it's just amazing to have a sounding board. So inevitably you would be like, low risk? Come on.
Right.
Anyway,
Leading
nice.
questions, yeah.
And I should really give kudos at this point to Don Stastny, who was our design competition consultant, who was also the design competition for the consultant for the Trust for the National Mall design competition, the one by Olin for Sylvan Theater. And Don was phenomenal and has done 40, 50 of these design competitions across the country and was so critical in sort of helping shape the entire process, including the low risk, high risk, way to engage with each of the design teams. And speaking of now that the transitioning a little bit, now that the design has been selected, David, can you tell a little bit, share a little bit about what, and you touched on this, I think, in your opening remarks, but sort of what are some of your hopes for the development with the Bridge Park, the moving forward, what are some hopes, what are some concerns, as we attempt to build both a physical but also metaphorical bridge that sort of links the city?
All right. Before I comment on that, I just want to say it's very high risk for me to give my I feel sorry for Don, who was our moderator, because he was very diplomatic in him. and him making sure he would kind of use his hand and go, high risk, low risk. Because there was so many passionate people in the room, it was very hard not to just say straight up, I want to swing over the bridge. And that's kind of the dynamic of this group. It was, we were given very specific instructions on how to communicate with the design teams in order to not create unfair advantages, and some other factors. And as a design oversight committee, we just had a great time playing with the high risk, low risk piece. So you're absolutely right. I laugh every time I hear it. For the rest of my life, I'll probably use those terms interchangeably. But my personal, I guess I'll speak from a community perspective. So the Anacostia, let's talk about the demographics, socioeconomics first. The Anacostia, has income disparities in the city. For instance, there's certain areas, certain wards in the city where the average household income is well over $200,000. And I think in Ward 8, in that community, from Good Hope Road all the way up to Congress Heights, I think the average household income, and maybe on the highest end, on the average median, is about $17,000. So when you think about the disparity between what you see in the upper northwest parts and what you see in that community at the foot of that, where that bridge will go, my first hope is that this will create that sort of destination creation that we're talking about. Development has been long overdue. And for those, and I'm a historian because of my work with the Pearl. I never considered myself an historian, but I have so much information in my head now, I just don't accept it. But the Good Hope Road, it was actually not an African-American community. For those who didn't know, after the Brown v. Board of Education, it was a predominantly Navy Yard Irish community, working class, middle class. Of course, there were multicultures there, but after that decision, there was massive, not just white flight, but black flight, middle class flight, economic flight. It was, and because my family lives throughout the entire district, I can hear stories. My grandmother told me stories all the time about her walks along Good Hope and MLK. So the hope is that that location returns to what it used to be, which was a premier location. And I guess my hope from a creative economy perspective, and the creative economy is a buzzword, and I'll kind of define it as, creative economy creates, I guess you could say, a marketplace for participation of all ages and ranges, from children who want to sell lollipops to artists who want to perform as a way to enter into the marketplace and make revenue to sustain their lifestyle. And we see the bridge as an opportunity to create destination in a community that has been long overdue for economic investment and development. Again, we have to do it in an intentional manner because this is the nation's capital and this is waterfront property. So no one is deceived in the community to think that we don't know the value of our own land. So let me make that perfectly clear. We recognize that we're in the nation's capital and that land is worth a lot of money. However, the investment has been meager. So our first economic hope is that this bridge is a stimulation, that it'll attack the unemployment rates, that it'll create small businesses who hire minority and bring in contractors, bring in an international influence so we can have the highest quality of a project. This is an iconic design. This is an iconic project. And as a community, that's the level that we want to see. We didn't want to see a flat surface. Secondly, it's a cultural connection opportunity. One of the things about this location, the Navy traditionally has always been really at the forefront in inclusion in the Washington, D.C. area and how they worked with minorities and majority cultures and businesses. And this is an opportunity to bring that connection again. The river for so long has been a divider, and we see this as an opportunity to kind of break down barriers and create discussions about how we continue to do this so our children don't have to continue to have these same conversations. And we have to do that. We have to do that work. It's not easy work. Again, I've been tasked with the responsibility of speaking the unspoken, which is not always an easy thing to do. And then thirdly, the environment. One of the key pieces that came up over and over again, if some folk, and I'll leave them nameless, had their way, that bridge would be a water filtration device, and a fish incubator and a bird preserver. So the love of the environment and the connections that our young people have, we don't need to teach our young people science and environment in schools with a bridge like this. They can come to the river and actually do real STEAM projects. Imagine your children having an experiential opportunity right at the foot of that river. get kids into the environment again, interacting and not just, you know. So we see this as an opportunity to create play, to have a good time and learn something effective, and we want to see that continue. And so the bridge means so many things to so many different people, and I'm sure, and I encourage everyone to really talk to the design committee members in the audience, because we all came from a different place. So we all have really different aspirations, and I hope I kind of articulated it in a way, Scott, that kind of speaks to the multifaceted opportunities that this bridge creates. So I think the community is really in a position to win-win for the city.
With that, we'd love to open things up to the audience with our remaining about 15 minutes. And as they're turning the lights on, so I can actually see hands that are up, two things. One, if you'd like to find out more information about the Bridge Park, please visit our website at bridgepark.org. We've got brochures that are on the table as well. Sign up for our email list. We have a very active Twitter at DC Bridge Park. So lots of ways to communicate. With that, I think I think Aaliyah, you've got a microphone. So, Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Two things. Who owns this, or who's going to manage it? Is it city? Is it Park Service? Is it a private somebody? Secondly, about the Pearl. Since there's no space for the Pearl apparently on the southwest waterfront, will there be an opportunity here for the Pearl reconstruction to be shown and taught about?
Okay, excellent question.
Do you want to start with the Pearl, sort of plans for the Pearl, and then I can talk a little bit?
Absolutely. Oh, Lord. So the Pearl, for those who don't know, the Pearl is a schooner that was chartered by a guy named Dayton and Senator Sumner, in conjunction with people like Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, to charter 77 indentured and enslaved folk out of Washington, D.C. So we're building that vessel. We plan on starting our capital campaign actually this month to start the process of using young people to build it. It escaped from the 7th Street Pier at the Southwest Waterfront. They picked up people there, and then they also picked up people at Buzzards Point who crossed the 11th Street Bridge with the help of Frederick Douglass, actually, and loaded there, and then they escaped to the Potomac where they were captured. So to answer your question is, we're still in discussions with the Southwest Waterfront Development. Our hope is that we will be able to dock either at the 11th Street Bridge, which is tenuous based on the silt and sedimentation of the rivers. But recently, the Lady Baltimore pulled it off, so hopefully we will be able to pull it off as well. But we're working with Scott. Scott and I are having some opportunities, and there are other ways for us to link. We're partnering with the Earth Conservation Corps. There's some docking there. We have a slip at the Capitol Pump House at Diamond T Park. We have a slip at Matthew Henson Center. So our hope is that we'll be able to connect the passengers who will use our vessel as day sails, educational, to places like the 11th Street Bridge, to then connect the opportunities with our other partners in our coalition to go further up to Narnia. I'm going to use that term until it sinks. So our hope is that this bridge will serve in a kind of a collaborative partnership kind of way, a connection. So the Pearl is integral in making these destinations throughout the region accessible. So our hope is that we will. The biggest issue is, will the South Capitol Street Bridge be high or low? So that'll determine largely whether or not we'll be able to move the Pearl as far as the 11th Street Bridge.
And I will say that David and the Pearl Coalition will have a presence at the April 12th, I'm going to give a shameless plug, the Anacostia River Festival, and leading tours as well, using that as a jumping off point. To answer your first question, the property was originally owned by the federal government because it was a federal highway. That the space has been transferred to the district. So DDOT, the District Department of Transportation, then owns sort of that space as well as they own the piers. We are working in collaboration with the District Department of Transportation, who actually would be building and realizing the construction of this, working in partnership with us, where we're bringing more than half the money to the table for the construction and endowment and so forth. And the district would continue to own it. They then would lease it to the building building bridges across the river at the Arc, the sort of nonprofit. And in a sort of very similar way that the other projects have been run in New York, Highline, the Brooklyn Bridge Park, Louisville Waterfront Corporation, the 606 Trail in Chicago. There's lots of precedents for this. And I should add that one of the things that we're doing is following a very similar model to the Arc, that the Arc has the parent organization of building bridges across the river at the Arc that manages the facility, but then they partner with all of these wonderful different nonprofits that bring other expertise to the table, and we're following that very same model so that we see another nonprofit would be running the environmental education center, the performance space, the cafe would be a leased space, working very closely with the commission, the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities on Commission Public Art for the space, a different group for the kayak and canoe launch, sort of you get the idea. That's going to make this project a more complicated one, but ultimately a much more successful one because they can bring their, most importantly, expertise to the table, as well as their the constituents and demographics to make sure that this is an active destination throughout its 50, 75 years. So, yes?
How the design of the existing highway has influenced the design of the park, and also if the noise generated in this highway could be a problem.
Well, I can say we're working with Threshold Acoustics as an acoustic engineers and have been designing the bridge in conjunction with them to try to mediate some of that noise off of the vehicular bridge that's to the north. Some measures in certain areas like the performance space, we're even pushing down into the structural depth of our own bridge in order to provide a visual shield. In other areas, the bridge, given just the level that it's at, is either above or slightly below the adjacent bridge, which also provides an additional barrier. So it's measures like that that we're using to really mediate that, the noise, effectively.
I would add, too, that as you're looking at this image, so the two far away roads, I'll back up. There were two old freeway bridges. Those actually were replaced with 3 new bridges. 2 of those are freeway bridges, so those are 55 miles an hour. Those are those further upstream bridges, so actually they're not right next door to it. The bridge that is adjacent to the 11th Street local bridge is the street vehicular bridge, so it's 25 miles an hour. It's much slower traffic, so it's not too different from having a park next to a regular sort of city road. That said, there are dump trucks, there are buses. It's a series of trunk lines. The buses, the 90, the 92, the V8, sort of otherwise go over that. So I know that a key part of the overall design brief that I think the design scheme really does a wonderful job of solving is thinking about the noise abatement. Where are some spaces where it's okay to be a little more noisy, and where are other areas like the performance space or the environmental education center or a cafe that need to be enclosed or respond to the adjacent vehicular traffic. So, a great question. Yes?
Hi. I actually live in Upper Northwest, and the reason I ask this is I love Anacostia Park, and I'm really interested in Yards Park and all the stuff going on along the Anacostia, but I think that they seem a long ways away if you live in Upper Northwest. And so my question is, not just for Upper Northwest, where people think of the waterfront as Georgetown, but also for other parts of the city, some of the newer developing areas like Shaw and Noma and so on. Are there plans for urban paths, bike paths, more immediate kind of connections that'll draw people from other more distant parts of the city down to this area where such exciting things are happening?
No, that is a great and wonderful question. Thank you. And that was not a plant. One of the first things that we looked at early 2.5 years ago when we started with this project is the issue of access. How do we ensure that there are many different ways to get here as possible? It's interesting, when we first started working on this project, we got kind of dinged by I don't know if you've noticed where the internet can get snarky. That probably has never happened to any of you in any of your personal lives whatsoever, but we got some snark. And one was, it's in the middle of nowhere, and how are you going to get there? And I think that was true 3 years ago, and we're not hearing that as much right now because we knew sort of what was in the pipeline of all of the development that's currently happening in the Navy Yard. Keep in mind that Yards Park was not built by then. The Boilermaker shops and the Blue Jacket Brewery and none of that was sort of around. So I think we're seeing that sort of density that's sort of happening in the Navy Yard, start to activate that space, but making sure that the 11th Street Bridge Park is deeply stitched into the adjacent neighborhoods is absolutely critical, and we see 5 different ways of getting there. The 2 of those are by the river walks on both sides, so it's a very short walk to Yards Park and to the National Baseball Stadium. Now that the Navy Yard has opened up, with the exception of if they're doing sort of events on the USS Barry, most of the time that river walk is open 24 hours a day, which is phenomenal. Thank you, Navy Yard. There's the Riverwalk side on the other, on the Anacostia side, and National Park Service, working in collaboration with DDOT on a Tiger grant, just started construction last fall to extend that bike trail all the way up to connect to Bladensburg, which then in turn will connect to the Northeast Branch Trails, that as I understand it, you can go, when that opens in 2016, you'll be able to bike from Anacostia and the site of the 11th Street Bridge all the way to Baltimore on a bike lane. I mean, how cool is that going to be? Having that connection on the Riverwalks on both sides and connecting a larger constellation of activities, I think, is really important. And then the other 2 the access points will be connecting to the 11th Street local bridge that's now currently opened. It opened about a year ago. There's a 16-foot wide pedestrian and bike path as part of that. And what's important about that is that has its beginning, it has its entrance at the corner of Good Hope and MLK, which is the historic epicenter of historic Anacostia, so it flies over that sort of horribleness of the 295 freeway that has cut off the neighborhood from the river for generations. And on the other side, it comes further up to M Street, closer to the Barracks Row neighborhood. And finally, perhaps most successfully, the 11th Street local bridge was built to hold the streetcar. So I know this is not without its controversy, but the next streetcar line after H Street, which will be up and running, I'm sure this month, the DDOT was very prescient and very thoughtful, where they built the 11th Street local bridge to hold the streetcar line. So in the streetcar, one of the next streetcar lines will go from Bowling Air Force Base, as I understand it, parallel to MLK, cross the 11th Street local bridge, turn left on M Street and go all the way to the Southwest Waterfront. And that's critical because that goes by not 1, but 3 different metro lines. The Anacostia Metro Station, Navy Yard Metro Station, and Southwest Waterfront. And DDOT is open to the idea of having a streetcar stop when that opens right on the center of the bridge on either side. And so suddenly we're connected to the larger WMATA system. Anticipating sort of that last question is, well, where will people park? Which I'm sure people might think about, and it's something that we'd love it if everyone came by Capital Bike Share or bus or walk, but we know that's not realistic. We are having some really good conversations with. There's it's called Maritime Plaza. It's a large 300,000 square foot Class A office space right next to the 11th Street Bridge on the Navy Yard side that has a 998 parking space that is packed Monday through Friday, and on weekends and in evenings it's completely empty, and they're wide open to the idea of monetizing that space and having parking there, which is really wonderful. If we're getting 1,000 cars a day, then I think we're doing pretty good, and that means that we don't have to build a parking garage, which is great. So we're trying to think of as many access points as possible. The very last thing I'll say, and then maybe we'll take one last question, is we early on worked with a group of graduate urban planning students from Virginia Tech who spent an entire semester looking at issues of access, and they came up with a final report that's on our website detailing what are some of the barriers for pedestrian and biking path and ways to get to the 11th Street Bridge Park, and how do we solve that. That's been absolutely critical to how we've been thinking about this project. So maybe one last question. Paul or Leah?
I know the word bridge is used as more than just a physical structure, but also as a metaphor for getting these 2 communities.
I'm sorry, could you put the microphone just a little up? I'm having a hard time hearing you. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
I know the word bridge is being used as a metaphor also to connect these 2 communities. I'm just wondering, how does that exactly happen in either this area or in other precedents? What prevents the 2 communities from just coming at the bridge as an amenity and going back to where they came from? How does in what way, shape, or form does this whole connection happen, you know? Why is this not just another movie theater that you go to and then you go back home?
That's a great question. Maybe I'll take a first step at that, and I'd love to sort of hear all three of your thoughts, and maybe that's a great way to wrap up the session. The bridge is sort of a physical bridge, but also a metaphorical bridge. I think the way I would answer that is sort of twofold. One, every single, and I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating, every single programming idea came from members of the community. So we think that, and they came from both sides. Frankly, when the same ideas were, when we asked the question, what should we put on the bridge, we heard the same things from both sides of the river that frankly was a little surprising. I thought there would be a little bit more disparity. So we have a sense that there is this common need for each one of the different programming spaces, that both sides of the river and indeed the entire city that you can be able to use and activate. And then I think the other is through this really brilliant design, there's been this intentionality of making sure that there is this sort of sense of activity on the Ward 8 side of the bridge to encourage that sort of activity to get there, and hopefully, if we're successful, to have people continue to go on into historic Anacostia, to the businesses that are over there, the Nourish Cafe, the on-floor gallery, arch developments, the wonderful the amenities that are there, to make sure that people don't get just halfway over the bridge and then go back to either side, but continue going from one way to the other. And the last thing I'll say is, I think sometimes this is perceived as, well, just the Ward 6 or the people on this side of the river don't go to that side of the river, but it works both ways. I mean, we've talked to the Bishop Charles Hudson, who's runs the Matthews Memorial Baptist Church, and he talks about kids in his church that have never been to the Smithsonian before. I mean, that's 2 metro stops away, right? They don't go to the other side of the river. So we think through a diverse and active the programming space that will drive people from both sides of the river and have this sort of what I call the pronoun shift, right? Where it's not us and them, but it's we, because you're sort of, and it's me and it's you, because you're sharing the same space. I think that ultimately is the value of cities, that it can be the crucible for where people that otherwise would not cross paths can cross paths. But love to hear each of your thoughts.
Well, I'll just second that, this idea of shared activities. For instance, in the cafe, we also thought we could highlight the great work by groups such as DC Blossoms and DC Central Kitchen, who have outreach programs for children and families, having cooking classes and teaching them about healthy foods, and connect that to the urban agriculture. That's just one example of many that will be deployed across the bridge. So I think this coming together through a shared activity will really create further connections between the community. And Scott, I don't know if you want to mention that HRNA advisors were also, they were actually, I think, on each of the 4 teams, and eventually Scott just decided to hire them directly to do the economic study. But that has indicated already that these activities and programs and revenue generators will not only help provide for operation and maintenance on the bridge, but will also have a positive economic impact in historic Anacostia, the immediate crossroads of MLK and Good Hope Road. So if you want to add to that, Jason.
Well, I just would say that I think that this bridge, the Bridge Park, will make a really unique public space, actually. And public space is something I think that collectively we're all grappling a little bit with, and have been for years, about what it means today, now that a lot of it's been colonized by shopping, most of the streets around us, or by spaces that are civic in a way that don't necessarily invite us into them. Whereas this is a public space that really sits in the city, but also in the middle of nature. And I think that'll draw people from either side and all around it, and then we'll all see what happens. So.
Yeah. And I guess from a community perspective, someone who has spent the majority of their professional career along Anacostia, I see it as the intentionality of the design. I mean, I think the input from the community, the design oversight committee, I mean, we really hammered at how to prevent you visiting one location and then just going home, because that wouldn't really serve what we wanted to see as a collective we. We wanted to create there, everywhere. So if you walked in from the Navy Yard and you had children, the play area is on the other side. And you're probably going to need some coffee on a cold day. So you might want to walk from Anacostia to the Navy Yard side. So the design kind of incorporates just those basic concepts that brings people together. And you see in the middle, there's this space that is interchangeable. So in theory, it could be an ice skating ring, it could be a whatever the community works with the team to come up with. And I think that's a critical component. And the diversity in the stakeholders that are connected to the bridge kind of ensures that we'll have multiple influences related to program activity. Our last meeting around the Anacostia Festival plug, the cherry blossom, National Cherry Blossom people were there, and they were really excited about how do we bring this $19 billion tourism industry piece to this park during the Cherry Blossom Festival. Not to say that all that money's made just during the Cherry Blossom, but that's an indication of how we can bring an international presence to these communities to create more of a diversity in who we see and where we see them. And we think that is the critical piece that kind of addresses what Bishop Hudson's concern was. My experiences have been the same in my work with young people. They often don't go to Georgetown or visit U Street or 18th Street or any culture outside of their comfort zone, and I'm sure most of us are the same way. So how do we create spaces that provide comfort, where you can feel safe, where there are activities that interest you, and you can bring a diversity of people to that same space, and we all share that commonality. And I think that because of the diversity, that was an intentional part of this design process. We hopefully can kind of touch on those issues collectively as stakeholders.
Thank you, David. And I'd like to thank first Paul Kilmer and Martin Moeller and the entire National Building Museum staff for welcoming us into their home. It's great to be back, even if it's just for an evening. And also to thank Jason and Hallie and David for sharing their experiences with us tonight. Please stay in touch with us. We're going to be around for a little bit, so come up, talk to me, talk to David, Hallie, Jason, or any of our design oversight committees. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.